Welcome back. This channel exists because of your support. Subscribe, hit like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Now let's get into the story. She told me, "My therapist thinks you're the problem, and I need space to see if you improve." I answered calmly, "Take as much time as you want, without me." She could share that insight at her next session. It started on a Tuesday evening in late September when I walked through the door of our Minneapolis home to find my wife sitting in the living room with a candle lit and a notebook open on her lap. The deliberate staging told me everything I needed to know before she even opened her mouth. "We need to talk," Melissa announced, her voice carrying that particular blend of concern and manufactured gravity I'd learned to recognize over our 4 years of marriage. I set my laptop bag down and took a seat across from her. "Sure, what's on your mind?" She positioned herself with her hands folded, like a doctor about to deliver a diagnosis. "My therapist and I have been doing some deep work lately on my anxiety. We've identified some patterns." The way she said, "we," bothered me immediately, like her therapist was her new business partner and I was the subject of their joint analysis. "Okay," I said, giving her my full attention. "What kind of patterns?" She took a breath, clearly sticking to a script she'd rehearsed. "Dr. Cunningham has helped me understand that my anxiety isn't just about work stress. It's about our relationship dynamics. Specifically, about behaviors that contribute to my mental health struggles." I waited, watching her face. She looked so certain, so confident in whatever conclusion she'd reached. "The reality is," she continued, "you've been the primary contributor to my stress and anxiety. The way you communicate, your emotional unavailability, your dismissive attachment style. It's all creating an environment where I can't thrive." I sat there processing what I'd just heard. 4 years of marriage, and apparently I was a walking mental health hazard. "Can you be more specific?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "What exactly am I doing that's causing this?" She consulted her notebook. "You work late constantly, which Dr. Cunningham identifies as avoidance of intimacy and emotional connection. When I try to share my feelings, you invalidate my experiences instead of validating them. You prioritize your friendships over our marriage. When we discuss finances, you become controlling and mistrustful. And your need for alone time is actually emotional withdrawal and punishment." I listened to her list, recognizing every item. These were our normal life interactions, repackaged with clinical language. "So let me understand," I said carefully. "I'm emotionally unavailable because I work? I'm invalidating when I disagree with you? I'm controlling when I want to discuss our budget?" "This is exactly what Dr. Cunningham warned me about," Melissa said, her voice taking on an edge. "Defensive behavior, turning it around instead of listening and acknowledging." I leaned back, studying her. "What would you like me to do?" Here's where she delivered what I can only describe as the masterpiece of her presentation. She softened her voice, leaning forward with what looked like genuine concern. "I need space to evaluate whether this relationship is healthy for me, whether you're someone I can build a future with, given how your patterns affect my mental well-being." She paused, her eyes searching my face. "And I think you need to show real commitment to personal growth. Maybe consider therapy yourself. Really work on these patterns." There it was. The ultimatum wrapped in therapeutic language. She needed time to decide if I was worth keeping, and I needed to fundamentally change who I was to even be considered worthy of that decision. "How much time do you need?" I asked. She seemed surprised by my calm response. Probably expected me to start defending myself, explaining why her characterization was wrong, begging for specifics on how to fix things. "I'm not sure. A month, maybe 2. However long it takes for me to gain clarity." She tilted her head sympathetically. "And for you to show some real commitment to changing these problematic behaviors." I nodded slowly, like I was seriously considering her generous offer. "So you want to take time to evaluate whether I'm worth keeping in your life?" "Exactly. I'm glad you understand. And during this evaluation period, I'm supposed to transform myself into whatever version of me you and Dr. Cunningham have decided might be acceptable." "It's not about becoming someone else," she said, backpedaling slightly. "It's about becoming the best version of yourself." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our quiet street. Behind me, I could hear her shifting in her seat, probably wondering why I wasn't reacting the way she'd expected. "You're absolutely right," I said, not turning around. "I think you should definitely take all the time you need to figure out whether I'm worth keeping around." I turned to face her. For the first time since she'd started this conversation, she looked uncertain. You agree? She asked. Completely. In fact, I think you should take unlimited time. Really dig deep, explore your options, see what else is out there. She stared at me. This clearly wasn't going according to plan. I want to work on this together, she said carefully, but I need space to think clearly. Absolutely. You should have all the space you need. I walked past her toward the stairs. Just make sure you take that space somewhere else. The next morning, she was gone. She'd packed a bag and left to stay with her mother, leaving behind a note about needing clarity and hoping I'd use this time productively. What she didn't know was that I was about to use this time very productively indeed, just not in the way she'd imagined. The first thing I noticed was the quiet. I woke up Wednesday morning in an empty house, and instead of the anxiety I might have expected, I felt something else entirely. Relief. No morning check-in about my emotional state. No careful navigation around her mood. No analysis of whether my tone was sufficiently validating. Just quiet. I made coffee, went to work, and for the first time in months, I could focus without that constant low-level tension humming in the background. At lunch, my colleague Kyle stopped by my desk. Hey man, you want to grab food? Haven't seen you in forever. I realized he was right. I'd been turning down lunch invitations for months. Yeah, absolutely, I said. Over sandwiches at the deli down the block. Kyle looked at me with genuine concern. Where have you been? You kind of disappeared on us. I thought about it. How long has it been? Since we all grabbed drinks? Like 6 months, maybe more. We figured you were just busy with married life, or whatever. 6 months. I tried to remember why I'd stopped going to these lunches, these after-work gatherings. Then it clicked. Every single time I'd made plans, Melissa had suddenly needed something. An emergency at work. A crisis with her mother. Feeling overwhelmed and needing support. Every single time. Did something happen? Kyle asked. That night we all went out last spring. Your wife seemed pretty upset about something. I remembered that night. We'd gone to a brewery in northeast Minneapolis, just a casual group thing. Melissa had been fine initially, then spent the entire evening making subtle comments about how much time I was spending talking to everyone else. We'd driven home in silence, and she'd given me the cold shoulder for 3 days. Yeah, I said. That's complicated. Kyle nodded, not pushing. Well, it's good to see you, man. We've missed you. That night, I sat in my living room with a beer and really thought about the past year. How many friendships had I gradually let fade? How many plans had I canceled? How many times had I chosen to stay home rather than deal with the aftermath of going out? Thursday and Friday followed the same pattern. Work, normal conversations with colleagues, coming home to a quiet house. No text from Melissa, which struck me as odd. She'd said she needed space to think, but I'd expected at least some communication. Instead, nothing. Saturday morning, I stood in my kitchen drinking coffee and staring at her laptop on the counter. She'd left it here, taking only her work computer. We'd always shared passwords, always had open access to each other's devices. It was one of those things we'd agreed on early in our relationship. Transparency, trust, no secrets. The irony wasn't lost on me. I sat down and opened it, starting with her browser history. Part of me felt guilty, like I was violating some boundary. But another part of me, the part that had been called emotionally unavailable and controlling, needed to understand what had really been happening. What I found was enlightening, to say the least. Dozens of articles about emotional abuse. Bookmark after bookmark about gaslighting, narcissistic partners, toxic relationships. Forums full of discussions about surviving manipulative spouses. Blog posts with titles like How to Recognize When Your Partner is Destroying Your Mental Health, and Why Leaving is Self-Care, and The Narcissist's Playbook, 15 Warning Signs. Each article was highlighted and annotated. She'd been studying this material like she was preparing for an exam. But the real discovery was her email drafts folder. She'd been writing detailed summaries of our interactions, apparently to review before therapy sessions. Except these summaries bore almost no resemblance to reality. I opened the first one, dated from about 3 months ago. The subject line read, Session Prep, Communication Patterns. According to her notes, I was a master manipulator who used subtle intimidation tactics. The time I'd suggested we create a household budget became, Andrew initiated financial control tactics designed to restrict my independence. I remembered that conversation. We'd been at this same kitchen table. I noticed our credit card balance was higher than usual and suggested we track spending for a month. She'd agreed it was a good idea. We'd even opened a spreadsheet together. But in her version for therapy, I was exerting financial control. I clicked on another draft. This one was more recent, from 6 weeks ago. Andrew has been criticizing my housekeeping, using it as a way to make me feel inadequate. Today he made pointed comments about clothes on the bedroom floor, nitpicking and using criticism designed to erode my self-esteem. I sat back, trying to remember. Then it came to me. I'd been getting ready for work and tripped over a pile of her clothes in the dark. I'd said something like, "Hey, could you toss these in the hamper? I almost killed myself this morning." She'd laughed and said she would. That was the entire interaction. Another draft, from 2 months ago. Andrew gave me the silent treatment for an entire evening as punishment for not meeting his emotional needs. He sat in complete silence, emotionally withdrawn, making me feel anxious and unwanted. That evening had been a Tuesday. I'd been on deadline for a major project at work, stressed about a presentation the next day. I'd come home, kissed her hello, and spent the evening reviewing my materials. She'd watched TV. We'd ordered Thai food. I'd been quiet because I was focused, not as punishment. But in her therapy narrative, my work stress became emotional abuse. I kept reading, draft after draft, each one more elaborate than the last. Our entire relationship had been repackaged, reframed, transformed into evidence of my toxicity. But the most revealing discovery was a series of draft emails to her college friend Ashley. 5 versions of the same email, each saved but never sent. I watched her story evolve, getting more dramatic each time. Version 1. "Hey Ash, things with Andrew have been a little tense lately." Version 2. "Things with Andrew are harder than I thought. Communication issues are really affecting me." Version 3. "I've started therapy because Andrew and I have been having real problems." Version 4. "My therapist has been helping me see that a lot of my anxiety comes from Andrew's behavior." Version 5. "Ashley, I need to tell you something difficult. My therapist has helped me understand that Andrew has been emotionally abusive." 5 drafts, each one escalating the narrative, transforming normal relationship friction into abuse. And she'd never sent any of them, which meant she was still practicing, still refining her story. My personal favorite, if you could call it that, was her account of the electric bill incident from 3 months ago. The reality, she'd forgotten to set up autopay when we switched providers. After 2 missed payments, our power got shut off on a Saturday morning. I called the utility company, paid the overdue balance plus reconnection fee, and we had power back by noon. Melissa had been mortified, apologizing repeatedly. I told her it wasn't a big deal, and we'd set up autopay together right then. That was it. Minor inconvenience, handled and forgotten. But in her therapeutic journal, it had transformed. When I made an honest mistake with the electric bill, Andrew exploded in rage. He berated me for being irresponsible, made me feel worthless, and used the incident to justify taking over all financial management. I felt humiliated. This is when I first recognized the pattern. I stared at the screen. There hadn't been an explosion. There hadn't been berating. But in her mind, or at least in her narrative, I'd become a rage-filled controller. I spent the rest of Saturday going through more of her digital trail. Screenshots of text conversations with friends where she'd painted me as increasingly problematic. Research on how to help a partner recognize their toxic behaviors. Saved articles about loving someone who won't change and when to walk away from a narcissist. Then I found the Pinterest board. It was private, titled Fresh Start. The cover image was a sun rising over calm water, one of those inspirational stock photos. Inside were dozens of pins. Studio apartment layouts with exposed brick and large windows. Furniture arrangements for small spaces. Kitchen organization for one. Motivational quotes about new beginnings and choosing yourself. Interior design inspiration for a single woman's space. Even a few pins about thriving after divorce and rebuilding your life after leaving a toxic relationship. The board had been created 4 months ago, the same time she'd started therapy. I opened a new tab and checked the browser history more carefully. Zillow searches for 1-bedroom apartments in uptown Minneapolis, filtered by price range and move-in date. She'd saved 11 listings. I clicked through a few of them, all studios or 1-bedrooms, all within her salary range if we weren't sharing expenses. She'd been planning her exit strategy for months, meticulously and deliberately. But she wanted to leave as the hero, not the villain. The brave survivor who'd tried everything to save her marriage before finally, reluctantly, choosing herself over a man who just couldn't change. I closed the laptop and sat back, needing a break from the screen. Then something occurred to me. I pulled out my phone and opened our banking app. We'd always shared accounts, always had transparency about finances. What I found confirmed everything. Her personal checking account showed a $3,200 charge to a boutique furniture store in August. We'd never discussed that purchase. The therapy charges were there, $450 monthly for 4 months. Then there were subscription services I didn't recognize, adding up to $650 a month. But the real discovery was a credit card I'd never seen before, linked to her profile. An account she'd opened without telling me. Current balance, $8,400. I sat there staring at my phone. Her anxiety hadn't started because of me. It had started because she'd been spending money we didn't have, creating financial pressure she couldn't admit to. Sunday afternoon, my brother Dennis called from Milwaukee. "Hey," he said, his voice careful. "What's going on?" "Mom called me. Said Melissa told her you two were working through some issues." I sat up straight. "I haven't talked to Mom. When did Melissa call her?" "Thursday, I think. She said you were struggling with some personal issues and they were giving you space to work on them." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. That's her version? That's what Mom said. Is that not what's happening? I filled Dennis in on the actual situation. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Dude," he finally said, "that's messed up. She's already spinning the story to your family?" "Apparently. What are you going to do?" "I'm still figuring that out." After we hung up, I realized the full scope of what Melissa had been doing. She wasn't just building a narrative for her therapist. She was building it for everyone. My family, her family, our friends. Getting her story out there first, establishing herself as the concerned wife dealing with a difficult husband. Monday morning, I went back to work with a new clarity. At lunch, Kyle and I grabbed coffee at the Dunn Brothers in Uptown. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Sure. Did you guys ever think Melissa was controlling? With me, I mean." Kyle looked uncomfortable. "Man, I don't want to get in the middle of anything. I'm just asking for perspective." He sighed. "Honestly, yeah, we all kind of noticed. But you seemed happy, or at least you weren't complaining, so nobody wanted to say anything." "What did you notice?" Kyle shifted in his seat, uncomfortable but honest. "Okay, so remember 4th of July at my place? That party on the rooftop?" I nodded. It had been a great day, perfect weather, good friends, grilling and hanging out. You got, 50 texts in 3 hours. Maybe more. Every time your phone buzzed, you'd check it, and your whole body language would change. You went from relaxed to tense. We all noticed, man. Nobody said anything because we figured maybe something important was happening, but then someone mentioned it was probably Melissa, and you kind of confirmed it without saying anything. I remembered. She'd been at her mother's that weekend. Said she wasn't feeling up to a party, but she'd texted constantly. "Are you having fun? What are you doing now? Who's there? When are you coming home?" The questions had felt caring at first, then increasingly suffocating as the day went on. Then there was the holiday party last December. Kyle continued. "The company one. Remember that?" "Yeah. That was supposed to be employees only, but Melissa showed up about an hour in. Said she wanted to surprise you. And she basically didn't leave your side the entire rest of the night. Every time you started talking to someone, she'd kind of insert herself into the conversation or touch your arm or find a reason for you two to move somewhere else." I'd forgotten about that, or maybe I'd chosen not to see it. At the time, I'd thought she was just being affectionate. Now I could see it for what it was, making sure I wasn't forming connections she couldn't monitor. "And Super Bowl Sunday," Kyle said, shaking his head. "Dude, that was rough. We had that whole crew at Mike's place, right? All the guys from our department. Melissa kept calling and texting about how hard it was being alone, how she thought guys' night was kind of exclusionary and outdated, how you were choosing your friends over spending time with her. By halftime, you were so stressed you couldn't even enjoy the game. By the fourth quarter, everyone was ready to leave just to cut the tension. What should have been a fun night turned into this awkward thing where we all felt like we were keeping you from your wife." He paused, then added, "And you quit the basketball league. Remember that? You love playing. We all thought it was weird when you just stopped showing up, but you said you were too busy with other stuff. I had forgotten about that. 2 years ago, I'd been playing in a rec league every Tuesday night. I'd loved it, the competition, the exercise, the camaraderie. Then one season I just stopped. Melissa had said Tuesday nights were hard for her, being alone so much. She'd needed me home. I didn't realize it was that obvious, I said. We're your friends, man. Of course we noticed. But you never complained, never asked for help, never suggested anything was wrong. So we figured that was just your relationship dynamic, and we should respect it. I nodded, understanding. My friends had noticed. They'd just respected my choices enough not to interfere. The text from Melissa started the following Thursday, nearly a week and a half after she'd left. The silence had lasted 9 days. Just making sure you're okay. Have you thought about scheduling therapy? I responded simply, hope you're well. Taking the time you requested. 2 days later. Silence isn't healthy communication, Andrew. 3 days after that. I expected you to at least try. This is disappointing. Tuesday of week 2. My therapist thinks your lack of response is very telling. Thursday. We need to set up a time to talk about next steps. I kept my responses brief and consistent, still giving you the space to think. No rush. And later, take all the time you need. I could feel her frustration building through the phone screen. She'd expected desperate texts, promises to change, maybe evidence that I'd enrolled in therapy or bought the self-help books she'd probably planned to recommend. Instead, she was getting calm agreement with her own request. Saturday morning of week 3, I was at Dunn Brothers reading when Melissa walked in. She spotted me immediately and walked straight to my table. I'd been coming here most Saturday mornings since she left. It had become my routine. She must have driven by, seen my car, and decided it was time for a confrontation. We need to talk, she said, sitting down without waiting for an invitation. I closed my book. Okay. She had papers with her, I noticed. Articles, printed out and highlighted. The public setting was deliberate, I realized. Harder for me to react emotionally with other people around. I've been worried about you, she started, her voice carrying that concerned tone. You haven't been taking this seriously. What makes you say that? You haven't reached out. You haven't shown any interest in working on your issues. My therapist is concerned about your avoidance patterns. I took a sip of my coffee. What specifically am I avoiding? Real conversation about your behaviors. About the changes you need to make. I thought you needed space to evaluate the relationship. Space doesn't mean complete shutdown, she said, an edge creeping into her voice. What would you like me to do differently? She leaned forward, her expression softening into something that was probably supposed to look caring. Show that you're willing to change, to grow, to fight for us. I set my coffee down carefully. I've been doing a lot of thinking too. Relief washed over her face. Good. That's good. What have you realized? I've been reviewing our relationship patterns, looking at our history. And she leaned in, expecting confession and contrition. Tell me about the furniture purchase in August. The $3,200 one. The color drained from her face. What? The charge to that boutique furniture store in August. I'm curious about that. She recovered quickly, her voice rising slightly. You went through my private transactions? Our joint accounts that we've always shared access to, I said calmly. I thought transparency was important in marriage. This is exactly the controlling behavior my therapist warned me about. She stood up, gathering her papers. This is why I need space. You're proving every point Dr. Cunningham made about you. Take all the space you need, I said. Stop saying that. People were starting to look. She noticed, took a breath, lowered her voice. I'll be discussing this with Dr. Cunningham on Monday, she said, like it was a threat. I just nodded. She left, and 20 minutes later my phone buzzed with a text. Your behavior today was very concerning. We'll talk about this in therapy. I didn't respond. Tuesday evening of week 3, a few days after the coffee shop encounter, my phone rang. Melissa's mother. Andrew, dear. Patricia said, her voice dripping with concern. Melissa is very upset. I'm sorry to hear that. She says you've been acting strange, going through her things. She's worried about you. I almost laughed. Patricia, did Melissa mention why she asked for space? She said you two were working through some issues, that she was getting healthy perspective through therapy. Did she mention she's been planning to leave for months? A pause. I think you're misunderstanding the situation. Did she mention the apartment searches? The credit card I didn't know about? The Pinterest board full of studio apartments? I don't think it's appropriate for you to monitor her like this, Patricia said, her tone shifting from concerned to defensive. I'm not monitoring anyone. I'm simply aware of financial decisions that affect our shared life. Marriage takes compromise, Andrew. You need to be more understanding of her needs. Has she compromised on anything? I asked. Patricia sputtered. Well, she's been very patient with your shortcomings. Interesting perspective. Thanks for calling, Patricia. I hope you'll be more receptive when Melissa's ready to talk again. She knows where to find me, I said, and ended the call. Friday evening, I was in the kitchen making dinner when I heard a key in the lock. Melissa walked in, clearly not expecting to find me cooking pasta with music playing softly in the background. She looked around, taking in the clean house, the organized space, the fact that I appeared to be doing just fine. We need to discuss where we go from here, she announced. I turned down the music. I thought you were still evaluating. 3 weeks is enough time for initial observations. You said a month, maybe 2, however long it takes. Has something changed? Frustration flickered across her face. I can't do this if you're going to be difficult. I'm not being difficult. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. She shifted tactics, her voice softening. I miss you. She reached for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't reciprocate either. Don't you miss me? She asked. I've been learning a lot about myself, I said. Good. That's what I hoped would happen. That's growth. I've learned what I'm willing to accept in a relationship. Her confidence wavered. This wasn't the response she'd expected. So where does that leave us? She asked. You're still thinking, right? Taking your time? Yes, but then take it. I'm not going anywhere. What does that mean? I turned off the stove, gave her my full attention. It means you asked for time to evaluate whether I'm worth keeping around. I'm giving you that time. And I'm taking time to make my own evaluations. Your evaluations? I'm the one who needed space. And you're getting it, I said calmly. She stared at me, trying to figure out what had changed. Finally, she grabbed her purse and headed for the door. You've changed, she said, and not in a good way. After she left, her text came through. You've changed, and not in a good way. I didn't respond. Monday morning of week 4, I sat in an attorney's office in downtown Minneapolis. Ms. Rodriguez listened to my situation with professional detachment, occasionally taking notes. What are we looking at here? She asked when I finished. I provided documentation. The timeline I'd created, screenshots of the Pinterest board, credit card statements, her draft emails. She reviewed everything carefully. You're in a good position if this goes the direction you think it's going. Joint accounts. No hidden assets on your end. Her undisclosed credit card could be an issue in settlement, but nothing insurmountable. She looked at me over her reading glasses. My advice, document everything, stay calm, don't engage in drama. Let her make the mistakes. I'm not trying to be vindictive, I said. I know, but preparation isn't vindictive. It's smart. 2 days later, Wednesday afternoon, an email arrived from Melissa. Dr. Helen Cunningham was CC'd. Subject, request for joint session. The email was professional, carefully worded. Dr. Cunningham was suggesting couples therapy to facilitate healthy communication and work through the current impasse. It was framed as a reasonable request, but the implication was clear. My refusal to engage was the problem. I hit reply all. Thank you for the suggestion, Dr. Cunningham. Melissa, I'm happy to discuss our situation, but I'm unclear on what you're hoping to accomplish. You asked for space to evaluate whether our relationship is healthy for you. I've been respecting that request. If you've reached a conclusion, I'm available to discuss next steps. If you need more time, that's fine too. Dr. Cunningham's response came within the hour, brief and professional. I'll leave you two to discuss privately. She removed herself from the thread. Melissa's response came an hour later. Long, emotional, accusing me of performing for a therapist, of being so focused on being right that I couldn't see how I was sabotaging us. I responded once more. I'm willing to discuss our future whenever you're ready. But I'm not interested in auditioning for a role in your narrative. Take your time. Sunday morning, week 5. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard Melissa's key in the lock. She came in with a suitcase, looking confident and refreshed. I'm ready to come home and work on this, she announced. I turned to face her. Let's talk. We sat at the kitchen table. I put out 2 mugs and poured the coffee. The domesticity of it seemed to comfort her. She thought she was about to win. I've spent 5 weeks thinking about our relationship, I said. She smiled. Good. I'm glad you've been doing the work. Looking at patterns. Reviewing our history. My therapist and I have created a framework for moving forward, she said, pulling out a printed document. These are the changes we need to implement. I let her present it. Weekly check-ins on emotional state. Me attending individual therapy with a therapist Dr. Cunningham would recommend. Monthly couples counseling. Accountability measures for my dismissive patterns. Social media boundaries. Financial transparency of my accounts. When she finished, she looked at me expectantly. So, are you willing to commit to this? That's interesting, I said. What? You spent 5 weeks creating a framework for how I need to change. For how we need to communicate better, she corrected. No, this is a list of ways I need to prove myself to you. I leaned back. Not once does it mention anything you might need to work on. That's not. I found everything, I said calmly. The apartment searches. The credit card. The hidden spending. Your draft emails to Dr. Cunningham where you practiced different versions of our conflicts, making them more dramatic each time. The text where you told Ashley you were building a case against me. The Pinterest board titled Fresh Start. All of it. She cycled through reactions quickly. Denial first. You're misinterpreting those. Then anger. You violated my privacy. Then victim. This is exactly why I can't trust you. Then gaslighting. You're remembering things wrong. Finally, bargaining. Okay, I should have been more open about things, but I stayed calm through all of it. For 4 months, you've been rewriting our relationship. Every normal disagreement became evidence of my toxicity. Every boundary I tried to set became proof of my control issues. My feelings are valid, she said. Feelings are valid, but they're not facts. And you've been presenting your feelings as facts to a professional who's supposed to help you process reality, not validate your fantasies. My therapist confirmed. Your therapist confirmed what you told her. Did you tell her about the hidden credit card? Did you tell her you'd been planning to leave for months? Did you tell her that every time I had plans with friends, you had an emergency? She started crying. Not the manipulative tears I'd seen before. These were different. Frustrated tears. Angry tears. I thought you'd fight for me, she whispered. By begging you to stay? By changing everything about myself? By showing you care. I do care. That's why I'm not doing this anymore. What does that mean? I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman I'd married 4 years ago. Who I'd loved. Who I'd built a life with. And I realized the person I'd married had been replaced by someone who needed me to be the villain in her story. You asked for time to evaluate whether I'm worth keeping around, I said quietly. Well, I used that time too. And I've decided I don't want to be married to someone who needs me to be the problem. Someone who can't take responsibility for their own happiness. Someone who rewrites history to avoid accountability. We can fix this, she said desperately. I'll stop going to that therapist. I'll delete the Pinterest board. I'll cancel the apartment viewings. You're missing the point. What point? You don't want to fix anything. You want me to accept that everything was my fault. She stood up, pacing. You're doing it again. Making yourself the victim. No, I said, standing. I'm making a choice. I've contacted an attorney. I'd met with Ms. Rodriguez a couple weeks ago, and she'd helped me understand exactly where I stood. I've been preparing for this. The shock on her face was genuine. You're divorcing me? You've been planning to leave for months. I'm just making it official. This isn't what I wanted. Then you shouldn't have put our marriage on trial. I was trying to save us. No, you were trying to control the narrative so that when you left, you'd be the hero. She grabbed her suitcase, her face a mixture of anger and disbelief. At the door, she turned back. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said. But I'd regret staying more. The door closed behind her, and the house fell silent. A few weeks later, the divorce was in motion. We'd agreed on terms relatively quickly. She knew I had evidence that would make things complicated if we went to court. She moved into a studio apartment in Uptown. I kept the house. I reconnected with Kyle and our friend group. Started playing in a basketball league again, something I'd given up 2 years ago. Had monthly dinners with Dennis when he drove up from Milwaukee, and we talked on the phone weekly. My relationship with my family had normalized. They'd seen through her narrative once I presented them with facts. My work performance improved. My boss mentioned a promotion track. I felt lighter, clearer, more myself than I had in years. It was a Sunday morning in mid-November. I was sitting on my deck with coffee, watching the last of the leaves fall along the Mississippi River. Fall in Minneapolis, that final moment before winter truly settles in. My phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. I talked to my new therapist about everything. She thinks you were emotionally abusive. I read it, smiled, deleted it. Didn't respond. Another text came through, this one from Kyle. Basketball tonight. Absolutely, I typed back. I set my phone down and looked out at the river, at the last of the fallen leaves, at the clear blue November sky. For the first time in years, fall felt like a beginning instead of an ending. And that was enough. Dear listeners, that's our ending. If it resonated, subscribe to support the channel. See you next time.